Hi everyone, it's Hans here, the founder of Cappuccino, and welcome back for Series 3 of Flat Whites and Insights, sponsored by SPA Advisory. We're here for some open, honest and vulnerable conversations held over a beautiful cup of coffee, and they're coming from my home, so I'll be providing the flat whites, and my guests, they'll be providing the insights. So grab a coffee for yourselves, take a moment, and I hope you enjoy this latest conversation. Thank you, take care, and enjoy. Jack, hi.
Hi.
Welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come over to the house and have a little conversation with myself for Flat Whites and Insights. I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, it's a while since we've actually had a conversation and met. We were just chatting before we hit record. It was through an old colleague of mine and a friend of yours, Alistair, who we connected originally. But it's been a few years now. So
Yeah, it has been.
it's been nice hearing what you're doing. I know you work in the field of kind of mental health space. For those who don't know, you'd like to give a brief introduction, kind of yourself, what you're doing, and more importantly, like who you are, why you wanted to come on, really, as well.
Yeah, okay. My name's Jack. I am a service manager for a Swindon and Gloucestershire Mind, which is a mental health service under the Mind umbrella. We also work with the NHS as well, so we're working with the NHS in the West. Currently, my background really is that I initially trained as an actor, along with Alistair, and that's how I met Alistair. And I kind of was working through lockdown and went, what do I want to do with my life, and what do I want to do? And I really enjoyed helping people and supporting people. I had a fascination with like trying to discover things about people and understanding mental health and psychology. And then through my own experience, everyone in mental health also has their own experiences with their own mental health and well-being. And through that, it led me down to go and do a master's degree in psychology. And the main focus for that for me was neuropsychology and neurodiversity with a specialist, we're specialising in ADHD. And then I worked, at the same time I was working alongside with people with complex autism. Then I moved into the field of crisis mental health work, working with people in highly distressed, that was suicidal, and now I've moved into more the similar field, so we're still working with high levels of distress and suicidality, but also working with general lower levels of mental health distress as well.
Yeah, as I say, it's a lot. It's that kind of journey from the acting to then. You mentioned it was lockdown, and I think lockdown, it's been a common theme on a lot of podcasts I've recorded. It was that time where people had a moment to really reflect on what they want to do, how they want to make an impact and things like that. I mean, something I do want to ask is, and I've always thought this, I've never really had a chance to properly sit down with someone working at a charity or in a field such as that is, obviously it's incredibly rewarding. Must be quite challenging as well. You're exposed to, it's quite heavy. I mean, I worked at Cancer Research UK with Alistair, and there were times then when you'd receive phone calls from people and they were really going through it, and it is difficult. So, for yourself, it must be, as you say, there's that rewarding element, but how is that kind of managing that balance? There must be days when sometimes it's it's tough because you're exposed to the harsh reality of it, I guess, in a way.
I think it's really challenging. I think. I think the way we kind of deal with it is that we have an incredibly supportive team, and that's been the case pretty much everywhere I've worked, especially when I worked in the crisis mental health field, and in those services, and then moving into the services I'm in now. My team are incredibly great, and we lean on each other to support each other during that. When you kind of learn about it from a professional or the academic point of view, you talk a lot about resilience, and you talk a lot about what is your personal resilience as a professional, and kind of what are what's in your toolbox. And quite often that's a lot of things that I use is like what's in your toolbox to look after yourself. And quite a lot of the time that is reflective practice of speaking with professionals and speaking with other colleagues of okay, what was it that was difficult? Why did I find this difficult? Would I do anything differently next time? And understanding, what was triggering about those situations.
Yeah.
And then also looking at what do I do to look after myself in my spare time? Do I exercise? And I think that's, exercise is a big one which people throw around quite a lot, but it's really important for me and I find it really helpful. But other things, I play video games as well. I watch football, as we were discussing.
Sounds like we've got very similar things that we do. I mean, exercise for me, and I'm not always the best at sticking to it. Just recently, someone who is a local football manager at a non-league club, Christian, he's been on the podcast. Really top man. He's only 28, so he's quite young for a manager. So he stopped playing quite young. But he's just recently started a mental health run club, which is just Sunday mornings in Didcot. And it's just a 5K, similar to park run, I guess, but it's a smaller group. I have gone along for a couple of weeks now. Most of them are step 4, step 3 footballers. So both weeks I've done my own 5K. So I'll catch you at the cafe at the end, basically. But it's a Black House. It's a new coffee shop in Didcot, and then we just sit and have a chat over coffee. But the fact he's done that initiative, and for me, it's nice to have that accountability as well. It's a run club. So if it was just me, I'd probably wake up Sunday morning and go, nah.
Yeah.
But because I have told people I'm going to go, it helps. Video games, football.
Yeah.
And we did mention actually, just before we record, that you're now in a role where you kind of are you're doing more regular 9 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
Which sometimes maybe people who haven't worked hours outside of that maybe don't appreciate how much that can impact when you're on shifts or when you're working evenings.
So with my old role, working both with complex autism as an autism practitioner and then working in crisis mental health work, it's all out of hours work because mental health doesn't stop after 5 o'clock. Which is strange me saying this now, but then my team at the moment, they work until the evening, so also, but it was amazing how much of an impact it has on you, and hats off to all the nurses, doctors and mental health professionals and just health professionals in general that work those out of hours shifts, because they are unforgiving and they're brutal. And when you're cracking open a can of Monster or like a coffee at 9 o'clock at night to keep you going for the rest of the shift, you just you do sit and pause and go, God, what am I doing? I'm about to have another energy drink at late at night or something just to keep me going. But it's also, like you were saying, it's incredibly rewarding. And I look back now going, oh, they were really fond memories, but I would never do it again. So
in terms of have done that.
I've done it. Yeah.
And I think there's things of that with a lot of things that I've done. This is the first time I've recorded a podcast since I've actually just left the Bucks and Bucks FA.
Yeah.
And again, similar for myself, really rewarding, really good memories. Can't wish anything more but the best for the team. It's just the right time for me to maybe move on in terms of just professionally and personally. Don't want to dig too much into it. It's still quite still processing it myself.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes it's something served its purpose and grown so much through it, and the kind of things I'm applying for now. I'm only able to do that because of what I gained from that role.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes you look back and you go, good memories, but it's that chapter's kind of closed, and then you take the skills from it, and things like for yourself now, managing a team that work in those hours, you've been there, you've done it yourself, which I guess is really, really important because you can relate to
absolutely
to what they might be thinking or feeling or
and they're brilliant. And it's funny how you speak about reflection, and I always think of it as like chapters.
Yes.
And I kind of go, we've come up to this climax at this point, and now we're all leveling up. So going back to that video game stuff, it's like, we've leveled up now. So this current way of working doesn't work for me. So what is it that I can do change, or what kind of change do I need in order to progress and keep going? And
I think it's a really healthy thing to do. I think I do struggle, and I probably came up against that friction. Partly why I've moved on now is because I could never be one to just this is how it's going to be, and I'm just going to sit and settle in this. And that for me, I need to be challenged, but at the same time need to see those like you say, those levels of what's happening, growing the organisation, wherever I'm working for, whatever I'm doing, whether that's with volunteering at Didcot Town, whether it's with my cappuccino stuff, whether it's day job. How am I growing myself as well as the organisation? And if one of those isn't happening, then maybe it's the right time to try something new or take a next step.
I think that's really, it's something that has taken me a long time to learn, being reflective, and that's kind of what I've heard really was, it took me a long time to learn about reflecting about my own feelings or reflecting of kind of behaviours or things and kind of what felt right and what didn't feel right. So I spoke to you before we started recording about currently going through an ADHD diagnosis, and that was something only really I discovered when I started reflecting and kind of going, oh, you know, maybe that something doesn't kind of feel right, me working really hard and then getting burnt out and then kind of trying to behave like other people.
Yeah.
So, and that was a really interesting kind of thing for me to realise and go, oh, it may be this. And then working with health professionals and kind of narrowed it down and went, oh, actually, they also think, yeah, it's probably this as well. So we'll go through the process of doing referral forms and moving into the diagnostic process as well. Which has been really helpful for me because it's given me that added sense of identity of what it is about me.
I think it helps, isn't it? That just clear understanding. It all comes to self-awareness of understanding what makes you tick. In the same way, what maybe the opposite rather than makes you tick. I don't want to like triggers is quite a strong word, but you know, in terms of what kind of will really impact you, maybe put you in a low mood or tire you out. And so and I've gone through phases of understanding myself, and I feel now I'm very, very self-aware, I would say. I mean, I'll look back on this in a year's time and say, oh, I thought I was self-aware, I'm sure I'll know more in a year's time. And that never stops, of course, but when I think of myself at 22, which is an age I've spoken about a lot because it's when I was introduced to mental health, had my burnout, breakdown, was experiencing feelings of suicidality and really like didn't have a choice but to look into mental health. I look at the me then and I thought I knew myself and really I just didn't at all. Was just, you know, had put all my self-worth in what I was doing and created this character of myself. And now it was quite like, or even this making a decision to leave the job, like my job is not my identity and I'm very okay with that now.
Yeah.
Whereas the me, then that's what caused so much crisis for me was, oh, but I can't quit this. Like, well, who am I? And now I'm quite comfortable with who I am, which is a really nice feeling to have. It's quite peace. It gives me peace of mind.
Yeah.
In a way.
I'm great. It's funny because I'm smiling because actually I was having the same conversation with my mum about male identity and often it being associated with your job because I've done a lot of thinking recently of who am I outside of my work and what I do, and that's a very difficult question to answer because quite often you associate it with I'm a mental health professional, or I'm this, I'm that. Yeah. And so I think it's
especially guys, as you say, maybe a bit more with those. Historically, it was more, you know, breadwinner.
Absolutely.
And obviously, then I'm not saying that it's more challenging for guys than girls, but I think it is really important that male identity. I like the way you worded that, male identity, and what is it to be a man as well as in terms of. It's very difficult, and I think if you asked a lot of people that question, I don't know if they'd be able to tell you an answer.
I think it would all differ. I've been part of my role. I've had the privilege of helping to develop a men's group for S&G Mind, and it's really interesting what comes out of that because we have vastly different people that attend this service. Yeah, but the conversation always moves into similar areas of. Oh, actually, I feel like this, or I experienced this, and actually, but they've never had the opportunity to speak about it with other men. That would give them that space to do that. Yeah. And I guess that comes down to culture mainly, especially older culture back, 20, even 10 years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago.
Not that long ago, and even with the mental health field, really, you're looking at 10, 20 years of when it was really becoming widely acceptable to believe the things that were...
Yeah, I mean, I went to an all-boys school and it didn't come up at all at school, as far as I'm aware, or it was maybe briefly touched on, but we didn't have lessons about it, and that was only why I left school in 2012, so it wasn't that long ago. Longer ago than I'd like to admit. 30 now, just turned 30, but and I'd like to think that's changed now, and it really, I'm sure it has, but I'm sure there's still...
I think it hasn't. I don't think it's very much far because I think there's... It's funny, I was listening to a podcast on the way here talking about the US election. That's recently just combined. It was the term anti-woke was thrown around and kind of that was theorised that was a possible reason why people voted against Democrats and they went more Republican and they went more Trump. And
I've seen a lot recently of people saying that there's becoming more and more of this, not necessarily voting for something you believe in, but voting because it's voting anti something. Yeah. There seems to be this trend of it's almost that more negativity and animosity and like hatred even in some way. And it's like, I'm voting for this because that means X won't get in, rather than why do I actually believe in the policies of who I'm voting for.
And from that as well, it's just to kind of add to it, I quite often have conversations with people of older generations, so you're looking at your 50s, your 60s and your 70s, that ask me about, the question is pretty much always the same: do you believe that there's more mental health, people with mental health issues in what's meant by that, but people with mental health issues now than there was before, because they couldn't understand why that number is so vastly higher now than it was beforehand. And my answer always is to that: no, I don't, but I think it is just more people, it's more spoken about now. It's more recognised, there's more research, there's more of a spotlight of, oh, actually this is a big deal and it affects people. Because then you look at times gone by, 90s, your 80s and older, you look at mental health is totally not acceptable. It's not, man up, when you're speaking about men, or women are hysterical. That's such a weird thing to describe somebody experiencing that, or autism didn't exist, and all of these different things.
Almost swept. They were moved aside. It was like almost removed from society, and we don't talk about that.
Yeah, and even people with autisms, where the autism with the symptom isn't as prevalent, you're still looking at people which, showing behaviours of them trying to cope in a world which is kind of going, no, you can't behave like this and act like this, and then all of a sudden you see a higher rate in suicide among men because they haven't spoken about things, and because mental health is difficult. You see a higher rate of suicide amongst older people in general, because they don't have, they were told, no, you can't speak about things, you need to bottle it up because you're there to just, you need to crack on and do things. Like the lie of, you shouldn't bring your mental health into the workplace. It should be left at the door. You shouldn't, that's a ridiculous thing to go.
Especially when you spend so much of your life there, right? Yeah. You spend more time there, more time with those people often than anyone else. Obviously there's now a bit of hybrid working and they're moving back to the office and such, but even in a virtual space, like, I can imagine it would be so lonely if you're feeling you have to put on that mask and you can't be authentic. I think anywhere where you're not being authentic, there's an internal battle. You shouldn't feel you can't be yourself in the workplace, should you? And that's something that I know is definitely something that I was working quite closely with my manager. She was CEO, direct reported to CEO at Bucks and Bucks, and even in my time at cancer research before, wherever I've been, I'm really big on that. It's like just naturally it happens to me. I think because of my childhood growing up and what I've experienced, I know I'm very, very attuned to other people's kind of energy in terms of if someone's having a bad day, I can probably tell. Like, if people are stressed, I notice it. If people are sad, I notice it. And it comes from a childhood probably where, sometimes if parents are in a bad mood, I would just be like, oh, well, I'll keep quiet because I don't want to get shouted at. I don't want to be the punching bag. I don't want to. So I'm very good at judging when people are stressed. But then what that does mean is I'm not going to stand aside and let a situation happen. I could be treated like a king, but if people around me are stressed and the environment's not great, then I'm going to want to do something about it. And if that's not going to change, then maybe I have to remove myself from the environment.
I think that brings real positive change and kind of it's. I think it's reflective of where a lot of workplaces are moving. Yeah, definitely. With looking at employee resilience, that's something which I speak about a lot, and as my weird role of kind of sitting in management and then also sitting as in the front line, and that, I think that comes into it. It's like, how do we look after each other? How do we look after ourselves? Because, like I said, we can't just go, oh, okay, emotions end there, and the bad things that have happened outside that's affecting me in work no longer exist, and I just have to behave like that doesn't exist. And I think that culture is really changing, and maybe I'm a bit biased because I work in mental health, and that's that.
I'm probably biased because of my experience and what I do as well. But there's more and more people, as you say, want to have a conversation about it, and it's getting to that point, isn't it, where the way things are moving and organisations are starting to do it. If you're not doing something in that, then you're going to fall behind if you're not taking it seriously.
Yeah, and I think that's just with looking at kind of I guess the great resignation. That's what it's called in America, isn't it? Because you get employees going, well, I deserve to be treated like I'm a human being. I deserve to be treated fairly, getting fairly paid, and people are leaving, and that's actually having a knock-on effect because it just I think personally it shows there's a real change of actually you need to look after the people that run that business.
They're the people first. I think an interesting analogy, I guess, is, like people sometimes talk about in football. I was going to talk about football, of course, and I know you're big into your football as well. Aston Villa, they would go, you've got a Champions League team now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they are.
And did not wick them out of the League Cup.
We did, but sorry to say. It was a close one though, as we were saying earlier, but and then we got knocked out by Palace though, so that's fine.
There we go.
That's it. Swings and roundabouts. We're both out.
Exactly, so. But no, so you use a football analogy, and often they talk about maybe in football there's a lot of player power and stuff. I feel like in the general workplace now there's a bit more employees feeling, actually no, if I want to feel like I'm treated fairly and respectful, and almost then backing themselves to go, well, if you're not going to do that, then I am going to either move elsewhere or find somewhere that is going to treat me like that.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, of course, because in that relationship there is still, people, not everyone's financially in a position where they can just step aside, and there's uncertainty then, and it could cause anxiety, etc. Then not having a job and looking for something. But for those who are in that position, it's like almost that bit more of, actually, am I happy here? And that is becoming, I think, much more of you see less and less people now that I talk to are talking about climbing a career ladder. There's obviously still going to be people who are career driven, and that's not necessarily wrong, but I think it's becoming less and less of a driver for people.
I think it's really interesting. It's something I thought about myself, and I think and also kind of caveat this with, I think psychology and mental health often intertwine so closely with philosophy. And I so often think we're philosophers as well as mental health professionals, because we quite often look at, people are not maybe careers driven. Why is that? And that, I guess,
almost looking into people's whys and people's values.
Exactly. And and that's what CBT basics of like core values of core beliefs. What are your core beliefs? What are the beliefs that can change, and changing that? And that's done in a way which is to benefit people, but also. We have those things about being career driven, and I like to believe I'm career driven, and I want to progress up the career ladder. But also, what has been challenging for me recently has been going, I work quite hard, and I don't really often see a lot of return in that, like financially, which is a thing, because I love what I do. I believe mental health and psychology is my passion. However, I'm like. Yeah, I love it so much, but I find it very difficult to go. Sometimes I'm like, I do all this hard work, and we are getting so many people come in to the service, and we're at capacity, and we're past capacity even, and the volume, and we can't deal with the amount of people coming in because there's so much need there to support. And we're not getting any extra help from any funders and the public, from news outlets and whatever else. And you kind of do go,
it's difficult.
But I could earn a fortune doing something else, and
because you're putting those hours and that effort into it. But then it's would those hours and that effort feel more? It would feel more like hard work if it was in something that it was just for the money. I think as you say, it's that balance. You can't. I think you're so much more likely to burn out or just become a bit resentful if you're doing something just for that. But as you say, you've got to find that balance of it's a career, it's something you're passionate about, but at the end of the day, it's got to be fair and like we talk about. Well, I talk a lot about self-care, or we talk about being able to look after yourself, and it's important that job is just a part of your identity, as we were talking about that male identity. So you've got to make sure that, but you want that to be able to provide for the life you want outside of work, and difficult.
Yeah, it is. I think it's
difficult.
It's a really difficult, because I could work less and actually earn more because I have the transferable skills.
Yeah.
But I really love what I do, and quite often I think it's the trap of being a caring mental health or like health professional, or people that care for people, or and anyone that works in the same life. You go, but I don't, because if I don't, you get that. I want to help people, and I'm not sure people will be able to do it the same
drive?
way.
Yeah.
And I come across that quite a lot when I'm speaking to friends in the industry, and I go, you need to leave, like you need to go somewhere else. And they're like, yeah, but what about this group of like service users, or what's going to happen to them? And I've been with them for so long. And I feel like that's what gets you, and you're like, oh God, like morally, can I do this? No, I can't. I can't sell my soul. Yeah, it is. And you know, again, like philosophy, like the morality of it all, you're like, oh damn, I'm kind of like stuck here now.
Yeah.
And you love it, and then you just, you know, as you have your 5th cup of coffee of the day, going, yeah, we're absolutely fine, don't worry. You can feel your heart racing, going, okay, that's it, next person.
Get yourself going.
Yeah.
It's true though. It's that I find like, well, I was talking about that, how other people are and stuff. I mean, and yeah, sometimes that would mean I'd end up probably going above and beyond, doing more, always looking at how I can support others before like helping myself. But that's who I am, and I think I understand, and it's for me to then understand and balance when that gets in the way of either my own well-being or in the way of me just doing my job. If I'm spending all my time working after others, it's like at the end of the day you're being paid to do a certain role, but as I say, that's just my nature. Like which is great, and I love it. I love nothing more than seeing when someone's genuinely grateful, or you've genuinely helped someone, and then you see someone who's been through a tough time, and you can see in someone when they're a bit more themselves.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, but it can also make it really difficult because I feel like I always want to be helping or always want to be giving, and there'll always be someone to help.
Yeah, there always is.
Yeah.
And a big thing that you know, as you were saying, well, how do I look after myself? And a big thing that I almost preach is boundaries and the importance of them, because they are life-saving, and they can really make a difference with looking after yourself and looking after other people. And they come in all shapes and sizes, but mainly it's about, you know, what are you comfortable with and what are you uncomfortable with, and if you are giving a lot of your time and a lot of yourself to other people, when does that start affecting you? Have you heard of spoon theory before?
This series of Flat Whites and Insights is sponsored by SP8 Advisory. They specialise in corporate, employment and personal taxation with over 8 years experience between the Big Four and industry, and they can support both businesses and individuals with their tax affairs. You've just got to visit spa8advisory.co.uk to find out more, and that link will be in the information for this podcast. I know Stuart really well. He's a close friend and he's very, very good at what he does, so I can only recommend the service. Thanks. Now let's get back to Flat Whites and Insights.
I'm not sure.
It's usually, spoon theory is usually associated with, it's a good explanation for autism and autistic burnout. So you start the day with a certain amount of spoons, and each activity takes a spoon, and you know, you could use it like, you could say, you know, you have a full battery, and each part of the day requires a certain battery. Then, depending on how many spoons you give to a certain thing, you may not have enough spoons left to do anything else. So all of a sudden you've got a task, like tidying a house is a big one for me for ADHD, and that requires 8 spoons, but I've only got 2 left because I've given my spoons doing other things, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I'm negative spoons because I've had to do it, and all of a sudden it's that cycle, and what that reflects on is like putting boundaries in place of going, actually, can I afford to give these things, or what do I need to do to space out? Do I need to maybe give less of myself to other people in order to look after myself outside?
Yeah, definitely. Which is it's actually a bit like you say, when certain people, when you're wired a certain way, it's actually so difficult to say no. Especially if you're kind of, I think, definitely in my time, I'm trying to get better at it, but I've struggled massively with being a people pleaser. And then also a fear of conflict. So that's a difficult combination, because it's almost, even if you don't know deep down, like, no, this isn't good for me, but then you don't want to say no because you're worried about how they would react. When often people are fine with it, they understand it, but I can understand why it's difficult. And then, like you say, you get yourself in these cycles.
And isn't it funny how those two things, people pleaser and fear of conflict, come so close together as well, don't they? And they are, conflict happens because you are a people pleaser. And if you're just pleasing other people, then the conflict just becomes internal in yourself, which is like what I was just, I guess, saying. Like, I have this internal conflict.
yeah, it's difficult. But no, when you were saying about like the spoon theory, there's a quote I know and I really like, which is like, don't say yes to someone else if it means saying no to yourself. And so in terms of similar thing, if it's like, you can only give so much of yourself, and it's
absolutely.
I mean, obviously, like in Cappuccino, I talk about self-care is not selfish all the
I
time.
was going to wear my hat. I was trying to find it earlier. Couldn't
you
find
had
it.
that for a long time.
Yeah,
You're
I
not
have
one of
had
the,
it.
probably an old design. You might not even do that.
Yeah, it's the type. Yeah, I love it. But I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was like
that's
rooting through my cupboard today, and I was like, oh god, I can't find it. But I totally agree. It's
but it's like a reminder to myself, and it's funny because I have that as my low slogan. It is a reminder to myself. I didn't know when I started it. I didn't think I'd be doing a podcast. I didn't think I'd have my own coffee.
Yeah.
Didn't think I'd be sponsoring football teams. It was just, I guess, a space for me to be authentic and just see what happens with it.
Yeah.
And it's really nice that it's still going strong now and looking to continue to grow. But yeah, it's just that reminder to myself, because I'm one of the worst for it. And I think that's where like I can speak on it. I have this page, and it's so I understand it. It's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the people that you're doing all this stuff for, if they knew how you were feeling, they'd probably be the first to say, no, it's fine, don't worry.
Yeah, absolutely.
But almost make it a bit of your identity sometimes.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do, and we speak a lot in the office and speak a lot in profession because we're caring people, and you want to help.
I think naturally everyone who's in that team, because as you said, you could be doing the same thing somewhere else and earning a lot more money.
Yeah, and I constantly have to remind people, being like, maybe you're doing a bit too much, because also you've got to think about when does helping actually hinder that person because you're doing things for them.
Yeah.
And that again, this is where boundaries come in.
You don't want to create dependence.
Yeah, and that's that's what we speak about as professionals, and I think it's really hard for me to speak about this not as a professional and use it's jargon really what I'm speaking about, but it is sometimes difficult from a mental health perspective because we follow a medical model for holistic approach. So psychological like approach doesn't fit in a medical model, because it's going, medical model is, here's a pill, we'll fix you because we know the problem, we know this. Psychological model going, yeah, we know what's wrong, but actually here's all the tools that we're going to give you, but okay, goodbye.
It's almost about facilitation.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's given that space for them to go, yeah, you can learn and develop with us, and you can reflect with us, and we can go, actually, why do you think that didn't work? And you need to get those answers yourself. And I think that's a big part of mental health, and why there's maybe such a bit of a crisis at the moment in mental health, because we're trying to force a medical model on something where we're going, here's the fix and we're going to fix you, where actually, in my view, the approach needs to be, here are the tools, you need to fix you, but we're here with you, and we'll hold the hope, and we'll hold that support with you, and then eventually you can take that back when you're ready.
Yeah. Because I think that's more, or just listening myself, or through what things I've been through myself. It's a long term solution, isn't it? Because the medical model, I guess, sometimes could be short term fixes. But then it's, if someone becomes then dependent or reliant, or that they're not understanding of themselves of how to manage it or model it or manage themselves going forward, it's only, you're going to see cycles. And I know I know from personal experience, I've been through that. It's quite cyclic sometimes. I know you spoke about earlier in WHD about sometimes maybe really working hard and then burning out, and then going through these phases of probably super focus, and you go really working, and then, so I've had similar with I think it's just that, where I was very, like, my value or my worth is all in what I'm doing, and that's how I burnt out, because I just was like, well, I'm only going to get happy if I achieve this. Yeah. And it sounds so, where I am now and where I am mentally and just as a person now, that's sounds almost like that's a totally different guy who was saying that, but that's where I was. But yeah, it just shows though that you can always, like, and it's never too late to learn, or just start to learn more about yourself and stuff. I
have a learning hour, so I dedicate an hour of my day to learning. Okay. Because that's something, for me, it works for me, because I go, my drive is, I want to progress and I want to develop. Yeah. And again, it took me a long time to realise that, and it kind of meant, so I learn about anything and everything, because I think, and I want to refer back to your cycles point as well, because I think this is where the philosophy comes in, because we're comfortable in cycles. You speak about human nature, you speak about what our brains are wired to do is to recognise patterns, and patterns are really comfortable because they're predictable. So if you're if you're falling into a cycle because you know that it's a comfortable place because it's something you've always had and always done, you know what the outcome's probably going to be because you know you're going to burn out. But then you also know that you'll take time off and refresh, and then you'll come back round to doing it all again. And that's a predictable outcome. So, you know, you go, okay, because that's a comfortable pattern. My brain recognises, oh, that's really good. So, so I really think, you know, I think it is part of that of go, because that's comfortable. And then what we try and do is break that cycle and go, actually, let's try it, you know, let's walk this way instead, or go up, move up a level, or do something different. And that's really scary.
Yeah, and that's where I guess, isn't it, that change is always scary, even if what's on the other side is going to be better, and you know it's going to be better, it's getting through that change, isn't it? Getting through that, breaking the cycle, I guess. Yeah. Whether it's a healthy or an unhealthy cycle. Yeah. I guess there's elements of the brain that doesn't know the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy cycle. I don't want to get too, I'm not a professional. No. But in terms of that, if it's regular and it's comfortable, then it almost doesn't know the difference between what's good for you and what's not, because it just wants what's safe and it wants what's predictable.
There was a really great quote which I heard, which kind of I like to tell people, is that your body can't tell the difference between physical stress and mental stress because it's the same system. So it's just feeling stress. So that, you know, speaking about earlier about looking after your body, you can't tell it. Your body can't go, you know, you're really stressed internally because of work deadlines, because of conflict, because of this, because of that. It's just going, my body's under pressure for something and I don't know why. So it's going to behave with the physical reaction. Whether for me that's eating a load of food and not moving much and this, that, and the other, and feeling really low, and that looks different in people. So I guess as well as listen to your body and recognising that way, especially if like patterns, you're falling into patterns and you're going, oh, something doesn't feel right because my gut's saying it's not right. And
often, your gut's not often wrong, is it? If you get that feeling about something,
it normally,
your body's telling you something.
And I think that's a really great one to think about.
I love that. I think. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I love obviously talking about it and to someone who, I mean, you obviously know your stuff. I had a little quick look at your was it LinkedIn just before I say you got so obviously you got the MSc. Yeah. What's the one after that?
It's a lot of letters. It's graduate membership for the British Psychological Society. So you could do an undergraduate degree or a master's degree in my case, because I changed over to do psychology, and it means that you have done enough in a course to earn that membership. So, and it just says that, you know, if I were to move into being an assistant psychologist and train to be a psychologist, I could do that, because you have to have that accreditation to show you have research skills, you can work with people, and so it's just, you know, it's an academic thing, but then it comes really handy for the work I do, because it means that I have that safety. And I've been taught a certain number of things to mean that. I think it's, for me, especially kind of hearing that when you're saying an expert, I gaslight myself often, going, well, maybe I don't know everything, and I think it's sometimes so difficult to. As somebody that works in third sector rather than statutory services, to go, oh, but I'm not a clinician, so therefore maybe I don't know what I'm on about.
But almost it's that no for yourself. You're just disqualified.
And then I reflect on that. Well, I've got a master's degree that specialises in a certain. You know, I specialised in something so in niche with ADHD and neurodivergency with neuropsychology, and that's when I think about that, and I go, oh but quite often
we're very good at putting ourselves down. It's that imposter syndrome classic, but I think that even it's funny, because my degree was chemistry, background scientific, started a PhD, obviously didn't finish that, but now I'm kind of in between jobs again. One of the things I've been looking at is there's a number of jobs. So I did like operational support, business support. I want to stay in operations and that side of things. I think I like that. I think it's something that I can add a lot of value. And like we say, not just to the business, but the people. And that's the bit I like. I mean, I'm naturally a caring person, I'd like to think. So I'll be very keen wherever I go. It's about that adding value, so that it's not just process, but processes that work for the people, and making sure that, you know, there's a good culture and all this, that and the other. So there's so many avenues. But actually there's a number of companies that, especially around here, there's so many scientific science parks and science organisations around like the Oxford area. So there's a number, even if you're in that kind of operational role, having a little bit of technical knowledge or a degree in the science is sometimes like a requirement in a few things I've been seeing. So it's one of those where almost, as much as I don't want to be technical, I don't want to be in a lab, just, those qualifications you build up, and like you say, it's just those tools. I guess it's another way of looking at a toolkit and say, something that I did in that chapter, although I thought that chapter was closed, you can always turn back to it and bring cool stuff out of it. And
you always learn from it.
Yeah.
And we develop and we progress, and the more, because your brain wants to keep you safe, but that even if you say not safe, is your brain goes, oh, I know that, I know how to do that because I learned from this randomly unrelated thing which I learned when
sometimes it comes out of nowhere and you go, why do I know that?
Or this pattern's familiar. It's quite often. So things I learned in hospitality about working with people, dealing with conflict, all of a sudden it's really applicable.
100%.
Now I'm running a mental health service and I'm dealing with complaints or things that happen like that. But I picked that up from doing a completely unrelated field.
Yeah.
So
one of the best things I think I did was my first job at County Research UK, which was effectively call centre job.
Yeah.
And I think what you get gaining from that in terms of that phone mannerisms as well, picking up the phone, being comfortable speaking, making calls, taking calls, and also you just didn't know what was going to be on the end of that phone call because we were just the main line. I mean, I remember I had calls, people telling me I'm hiding the cure and all this, that, and the other, and a way of, as you say, being able to be agile and in that moment react, and then that's really helped. Say at Bucks and Bucks, we were dealing with football clubs, and football's an emotional sport.
Yeah.
Even on the business administration side, someone's got a player suspended, they don't think it's fair. They pick up the phone, You've got to be able to kind of handle that and manage that, and I think those skills are so important. And it's funny for me, as someone who definitely growing up had a fear of conflict, I think it's something that I'm definitely working on, but now it's great. On last job, actually implemented and then monitored the complaints process, and I was like, wow, me originally I would have hated anything to do with complaints, but sometimes actually if someone's taken the time to give sometimes constructive, but if someone's taken the time, they obviously care about it. So it's trying to get down to that root of, okay, well, they clearly care. They're not just complaining for the sake of it. So let's try and work something.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's that transferable, and you're always adding to your toolkit or just growing, and that's part of the challenge, isn't it?
I think so. I think it's sometimes a lot of people don't recognise it. That they go, well, actually, they do have the skills and the abilities to do that, and what they think they can do. And sometimes people just need that reminding of going, even with the people I support, it's, yes, you've been through X, Y, and Z, but look at all the things you've learned and look how you're reflecting now. And people go, oh yeah, I didn't realise that actually I did all of these things and I did all of that work. And that's, most of my job is being a cheerleader. I think that's what mental health a lot of the time is going, look at all the great things you're doing. Woo! You're brilliant, you're amazing, and you've put all these things in place and supporting them from the sidelines.
Yeah.
As they're doing.
Yeah, because having someone truly, genuinely believe in you as well, especially I guess when people are in those darker places, it's just that there is that just total lack of self-confidence, lack of self-love. They just don't see it, and like you say, and then once people start to believe it, it's incredible to then see the growth.
Yeah.
So it must be, as I say, so rewarding to see the kind of impact of the work, and it's one of those, I think, with a lot of things, like say what I do with Cappuccino, anything like charities like Mind are doing, you never really know the full impact of the work you've done as well.
Sadly,
sadly sometimes.
I think
sometimes you probably think it would be amazing to see or hear, see what's gone, but it's that,
But every now you do, and then you go, oh my God, what a difference! But
exactly,
it's almost a pride for them though, and you go, I'm just so proud of this person to see when they're in this dark place and there's no hope, and you've just taken it a step at a time with them, and you've walked with them on that journey, and then you hear from them or you see them and you go, oh my God, this person's, this is really great. And I often joke to my colleagues that healthcare, I think, is the only industry in the world where you kind of go, we don't want to see you again, and we don't want your business, and you just go, we really hope this is the last time I see you, and I never want to speak to you again, in the nicest way. And I think that always, provides me a bit of comfort, knowing that if I don't hear from some people, it's because actually we've given them the tools to.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've gone and done that, and a lot of the work that I do is dealing with unknown, which is is tricky because
Yeah,
obviously
of course,
control is the thing which everybody wants, and
Yeah.
and I think we try and get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, definitely amazing. Now, I feel like we kind of had a good conversation. I feel it's kind of wrapping up. There's something that I do ask everyone on this
Yeah.
podcast. I think it'd be interesting to touch on this because we've spoken a little bit more about maybe others, and I know you've spoken about your self-care and how you like to look after yourself, but I'd be interested to know what does happiness mean to you?
Yeah, I've been thinking about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
quite a lot.
And Villa on top of the Champions
Yeah,
League is
that was a happy
that's one
moment.
answer.
Attributing my happiness on the performance of other people. No, I think it's tricky because I think there's like I was saying, there's the philosophy side of mental health and my profession, and there's also the me part of it. That kind of where those are so closely linked, but also I think for me, I find happiness with spending time with my loved ones and friends and family and doing things like this. I love promoting the mental health and speaking about it. Passion is another thing that I would say that really makes me happy.
Yeah.
Because I am a big believer in, have you heard of Simon Sinek and the why?
Start with why.
Yeah. I love that. That's my jam. That's where I live, and I kind of go. I really like to think that purpose drives a lot of it.
Yeah.
Us a lot of the time, and it drives me.
Yeah.
Of
I'm 100% the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful for. I'm grateful for the people I have surrounding me, and I think a long time ago I used to surround myself with. I used to think that my worth was determined by others.
Okay.
That was a hard thing for me because actually, I determine my worth now through my own mental health struggles and journey, and kind of like realising, it's me that actually determines my worth, and not what I do, not the people I please, not the people I keep around me, because I was so conscious about what people thought of me and trying to fit in, and I found a lot of happiness in the things that I do that make me happy, like stupid things, playing games
It's those things, isn't it? Sometimes you say, no, I love that, and there's, it's those things that like, it's like they say, what would you do if no one was watching, or you didn't have to tell anyone about it. These days everyone's on social media like, oh well, I'll take a picture of that because if I'm doing that, it makes it look like I'm successful. It makes it look like I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
It's almost that if no one else knew, and you didn't have to tell anyone else, what would you do for you? And how would you spend your time? And sometimes that I think.
And I spend a lot of my time not telling other people what I do. And I'm not going to say it here because because I think that came part of my realisation about validation from others. And FOMO was a big thing. And wanting to be involved with things as well as validate. People would validate me if they found out I was doing this stuff. And I really started to turn that on my head, maybe sometimes detrimentally, because I go, no, I didn't do this at work, and that was my team, and I keep getting told, take credit when you're doing positive, and I think I'm torn between that mixed messaging of take credit for what you've done and like showcase all these amazing things you do, but then also for me, I like knowing that it doesn't matter. What do I gain from telling people?
Almost like the outcome and what you achieve doesn't change by telling others.
No, and I'm
not
glad.
needing that as that final step to get the validation almost.
And it's really, I think it's been really empowering for me because again, it sometimes comes from negative things that happen, and it's like, do I make excuses or do I just accept the fact that things that have led to this has meant this because of the way I've dealt with things, and kind of like I learn and grow from things, and I think part of that comes from me. I get slightly confused when people say don't make excuses, but also what explain yourself, why have you done this, and then when you go explain the steps to get here, but then in the same hand we again as a culture would go you can't make excuses for anything, but we want to know why, but you gotta and I never know, I'm like, how does that not sound like an excuse if you're going, oh, it was because of X, Y and Z, and I realised that's completely ridiculous, and who cares? I think that's what I've learned from it. For me, it's like, who cares? No one really.
What's happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously you look to see what you can learn from it.
Yeah, and I can say, this, and I will go like, this happened because X, Y, and Z. But does that bother me that I've either made an excuse or explained myself? No, it doesn't. Because I'm happy with kind of like learning and developing and growing, and I know that's part of it. But again, younger me wouldn't have known that.
No, of course.
But now I think...
Same with myself in terms of that. Actually looking back at something when it didn't go right and being able to just, accept it.
Yeah.
And being able to maybe learn from it. And I mean, I'm another sport I'm big into is my basketball. And I know I'm big into stats, so that's why I love basketball, because it's all numbers, right?
Yeah.
But recently saw that LeBron James is now the player who's missed the most shots in the NBA. But then you think he's also the highest point scorer.
Yeah.
And he's got all these...
labelled the greatest of all time.
Yeah, exactly,
well.
greatest of all time. So I think it's a great analogy. I know people spoke about it before. Michael Jordan, he used to say that. He was like, I've missed so many shots.
Yeah.
And it's just... That's, I think, for me, a nice thing to think of,
Yeah.
people, and there'll be people that pick up on every miss that he makes, but it's if you're gonna achieve anything, you're gonna have misses along the way, kind of thing, and it's that.
Yeah.
But not being able to detach from that failure and go, that's part of it. And I think it's really interesting.
I remember my first management job. I got sacked from.
Okay.
Yeah, because and for a long time I went, maybe I'm not a good people person. Maybe I'm not a good manager, and it took me a long time to realise actually that was just a combination of things that didn't go right, and or perhaps it was people's points of view and they didn't agree with the way I worked, and I didn't fit into their model of things. And there were so many different things reflecting on it, and then kind of realising now I'm in a position where I'm in my fourth manager's job, and I run a successful service, and the service is continuing to grow and expand, and my team are great, and
it goes to that, as long as you know your value, and that's the thing. It's like your value doesn't change if you're in an environment where your value isn't seen by others. Being able to hold on to it yourself and knowing that maybe I'm just not in the right place. And find somewhere where that will be appreciated, rather than just one person's opinion of you isn't the right opinion. So, I think it's good. But now, what you said about the I love that. 2 words you said were passion and purpose. And I think that's what I'm quite big on. I mean, Cappuccino is literally me acting on my purpose through my passions. In terms of purpose, mental health awareness, passions of coffee and football. So I think there's something I can relate to in that as well. But no, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
It's been
Thanks
a great
so
chat, and I look forward to other people seeing it, and I'm sure there'll be a lot they can take from it. And it's been good to catch up as well.
Yeah, it's been nice to see you.
Yeah, pleasure, mate.
I'll be back anytime. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries at all. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this latest episode of Flat Whites and Insights, and I really hope you gained something from that conversation, because I know I certainly did. It would mean a lot if you can like or subscribe on whatever platform you may be watching or listening on, and please do share this podcast with any friends or family or anyone you know that you think might benefit from having a listen. Also, if you can head over to Instagram and give Cappuccino a follow, that's where you'll find the latest updates as we look to raise awareness of mental health through my passions for football and coffee. And I'm always open to people getting in touch if you want to have a conversation, collaborate, or even come on the podcast yourself. The support means a lot, and I'm very grateful. Thanks so much again, and I hope to see you soon.